Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you just a bit of hush now so that our gentlemen can hear when we're asking them something, because it's quite difficult to hear when we all talk at the same time, isn't it? I know we're all excited. Can I introduce you to, I should start this end really, because these are the more senior of our gentlemen. Wally Martin, who was on course 19, Vernon Duker, who was on course 19. These two, is this the first time you've met today?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Wow. So they went over on the same boat, they went down on the same train, they were in Falcon Field at the same time, but each course had 4 flights. So they were on different flights, split alphabetically, and so they never actually met. So one of them might have been having, flying training, one of them might have been ground instruction, the other one was probably in the swimming pool, and Vernon was probably in the bar. And you were probably in the bar.
In the bar?
Having a drink. It was very hot.
So how many people were on the camp then at one time, at that period of time?
I don't know the answer to that question. We have their ages. Oh, ages? Yeah. Wally?
97.
Age?
97.
And now we're going to the youngsters at this end. Keith Leedham, who was on course 26. And how old are you?
96.
96.
A youngster.
And Len Worsdell, who was on course 27, which was the last course.
97.
97?
Six.
Next year,
So there we are, quite impressive for a start. So, first question, what were you doing when you joined the RAF? So who wants to start? Do you want to start, Vernon? What were you doing?
Well, if I could do a little bit of family history.
Go ahead.
I was brought up actually as the baby with a family of 10 brothers and sisters.
Wow.
And the eldest one was Fred in the RAF. The next one was Arthur in the RAF. Then we came down a bit to the sisters, and the brother-in-law, that's one of the sisters' husbands, was in the RAF. Then we come down to George, who was in the army, and then to Victor, who was in the army, and then me. So that was the family. But Fred, being the eldest, was in the First World War with the RAF, or whatever it was called. And when he left, he joined the reserves. Then we skipped to 1938. There was what was known then as a crisis, which was with Germany and the rest of Europe. And in 1938 there was this crisis which stopped my first school visit abroad. That was cancelled. But also Fred, who was in the Air Force Reserves, was called back into the Air Force. And where did he go? Stanmore. And he stayed at Stanmore in the RAF right the way through the war. What he was doing here, I don't know. We understood he was underground somewhere. And the fact is that he actually, his family, his wife, and later his son, lived in Harrow. So he went home every night, and he was in the Air Force for all through the war at Stanmore. I was brought up in North London, although I'm not in North London now. I'm a Devonian, but I was brought up in North London. And if you want to know what was happening when I was called up, I was with Hornsey County School in Wisbech, Cambridgeshire, where we'd been evacuated to. And it was quite interesting because another school from Hornsey was the stationer school, and they came to Wisbech as well. But they were an all-boys school, and so they went to the all-boys grammar school in Wisbech. We were co-educational, so we were stuck with the girls' school in Wisbech. And it was all very interesting and jolly. And of course I joined the ATC, which everybody did in those days, and then went to Queen's University in Belfast for 6 months, and back to Abbey Road for the Air Force, Abbey Road in London. Well, my sister happened to live in Golders Green, which was only a mile or two up the road, so of course I used to go there every night. So it was all quite jolly and interesting. And then, of course, in the Air Force we went to Stratford-on-Avon, and there I was left with 2 others or 3 others in a house by ourselves for month after month, waiting for corrective goggles for flying, because I was short-sighted, which was all very nice, because all we did was punt along the river and get to the nappy first. Nothing else mattered. We were there for months, then whipped away to Manchester Heaton Park, and then away we went on the Queen Mary up to Greenock, got on the Queen Mary to go to New York. And I think the most wonderful time was standing on the the prow, whatever it is, the front of the boat, and seeing New York coming up on the horizon with all the things we'd seen in films. It was really quite incredible. So we disembarked in New York, were put on a train, and then I think it's Daughters of the Revolution or somebody or other.
The British Empire.
British Empire. They came along with bunches of bananas and gave us all a banana. We hadn't seen a banana for years. We thought this was wonderful. Then, of course, up to Canada. Now, before we went to Canada, they said to me, "Oh, you won't notice the cold in Canada. It's so cold you don't notice it." Don't notice it, I couldn't feel a thing. It was freezing. I thought my ears were dropping off. It was absolutely awful. And it was really nasty until we got on a train and went to Oklahoma. You see, I'm really an interloper in all this lot, because I went to Oklahoma, which was Ponca City, Oklahoma, where I trained on Stearmans, which was very nice, you know, Oklahoma, where the sun comes streaming down the plain and, you know, corn is as high as an elephant's eye, all this sort of thing. And it was very, very nice. Met wonderful American people. Used to go to them for the weekends, and they took us around and introduced us to the Osage Indians and all this sort of thing. And it was lovely until it started to snow. And then we would be up in our Stearmans, and the instructor would say, "Take your mask off and rub your face, because it's going white and you'll get frostbite." So you take the mask off, rub your face, put the mask on, and then land in a foot of snow, which wasn't very nice. Then we transferred into Harvards, and after a week or two of Harvards in thick snow, they said, "We're closing down, you'll have to go somewhere else." And they said to me, they said, "You and whatever his name was, I can't remember, another cadet," they said, "You will go to Mesa in Arizona." So we thought, well, that's all right. They said, roughly, they said, "There's your plane, put your kit in the back, and off you go." This is Harvard, to Arizona. So, you know, we said, "To Arizona," yes, they said, "with no map, you just follow the railway lines." So we followed the railway lines to the first stop, where we refueled. Then we followed the railway lines a bit further down to a place where we stopped overnight. Then we went down to Tucson and stayed there overnight, following the railway lines all the way, no maps. And when we got to Tucson, we spent the night there, and we went across at El Paso or somewhere into Mexico, which we thought was terribly exciting. Came back again up to Mesa, and there it was, Mesa. They said, "Right, park your stuff, start tomorrow morning, we want you on there at 8 o'clock something. And that was it. We joined Mesa. But of course, being oddments there, everybody else had got their friends that they'd gone with everywhere. So I don't really know. Wally here tells me he was the same lot as me, 19, course 19. But of course, all we were interested in then was, this is your instructor, there's your plane, you know, you're doing circuits and bumps today, and next tomorrow we do something else, and that was it. I didn't know anybody else in the course, except the chap I'd gone with, and I used to go into Phoenix with him, because at night, you know, there's nothing to do in Mesa, you know, except count orange trees. Because there were thousands of orange groves.
Yeah, Vernon, there was the Green Frog.
There was what?
Yeah, there was a bar called the Green Frog.
No, never went there.
It also had a bowling alley.
Me and my mate, we used to get on the bus to Phoenix.
Wally,
And then we tried all the drinks that we'd never heard of before.
Wally, what was your experience in the early part before you went out, before you
Well, I
joined the Air
really
Force?
wasted my time with an insurance company, and I wasn't the least bit interested in insurance. I just living for the day when I could get into the Air Force and become a pilot. You know, that's the thing that we wanted to do more than anything else in the world. I might say that I'm quite surprised that we're all in such good nick. Because in fact, this is not a very good proper representation, because, you know, I can only think of one other chap, Vernon, who's alive from our course, and we started off with 109 cadets, and I only know one other chap who's still alive. That's terrible.
Is that from your course, Wally? Is that course 19?
Yes.
109 started.
Yes.
3 left as of today,
Yes.
I think, yeah?
And the thing that we were frightened of most, I'm sure you'll agree, chaps, that was perhaps being eliminated. And I'm surprised that there were so many, in fact, eliminated, because although we went out as 109 cadets, there were only 87 of us who graduated and went back to Canada.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes,
So, Falcon Field is quite a famous airport because it was funded by Ginger Rogers, Fred Astaire, Henry Ford, and I think one other, wasn't it? Hoagie Carmichael. When you were at the airfield, was there any evidence of the funding of these great Hollywood superstars? Did you know about it?
I didn't.
Not a thing.
No.
They built the swimming pool though, didn't they? Didn't they pay for the swimming pool?
Yes, they did, off
Did
of
they
the
build-
fact of the extras that appeared in the movie.
Yeah.
They did that because they couldn't give them money, so
Yeah.
they built the swimming pool for them.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Did you all swim in the pool?
Yes.
Yes, I suppose so. Can't remember swimming in the pool, but I expect we did.
Len remembers, was it because it was so hot?
Oh, it was almost 100 times. It was very, very hot. All I remember is young parade on the tarmac, and by the time he stood to attention, he couldn't move because we sunk into a tarmac. It was that hot. But it was, they had a pool in front of the entrance of the aerodrome, and we used to go in there and just run up and do a flop. You know, we couldn't swim very well. It wasn't big enough to swim in, but it's good just to get fresh, you know. So, and to run up and down and challenge each other to how far we could get into the pool before we hit the water. It was a nice pool. It only came in whilst I was at Mesa, at Falcon Field. I don't exactly when, but it wasn't there at the beginning. And we had no knowledge then of the people that the lady mentioned. We had, but all I can remember is that the friendship of the American people, who were extremely friendly. They'd do anything for you. And what I used to do, my friend, is at the end of the day, or whenever it was, we used to get a hitch. And it took half an hour to get on a hitch into Phoenix. And there they had a series of houses, and there was one for things people. And they used to go there, you know, to treat them in the place, and they really were extremely friendly. And what they were about to say, I can't express enough my appreciation for them.
Some of the families used to take you in at the weekends, didn't they, when you weren't training, so you could go and stay with a family locally?
Well, I can't remember
You didn't do that?
But they were certainly very, I don't, you know, I don't want to imagine that being true.
Yes.
But I can't remember it. It's a long time ago.
Yeah. Did you do that, Wally? Did you have a family that...
Yes, Mrs. Hetherington picked me up the first weekend that we were there, I think. And she had a very nice daughter named Margaret. And we were in touch with Margaret up until she died last year.
Oh. And have any of you been back to Falcon Field?
No.
Have you been, Keith? When did you go?
Yes, just a few years ago. I can go back every year, of course, because those who are buried there are entitled to go back every year. But I went back only once, and there was a tremendous. The Americans make a great deal of those who are buried there.
The Remembrance Day ceremony.
Yes, and they have a cross with a Union Jack and the stars and stripes, a flight by aircraft.
Yes, the World War II aircraft fly
Yes,
over, the
yes.
Stearman.
I mean, it's very impressive, and I mean, they go out of their way to remember these boys who are buried there.
Yeah, so these were cadets who didn't finish their training, who crashed during training and then were buried in the British cemetery there.
But I felt these were just young lads when I knew them, and I didn't feel that I wanted to go back every year.
No.
But
But you were all young men. I mean, how old were you when you arrived at
18.
18?
19.
Yeah, 19 I was.
18, 19.
Mm.
Yes.
I was 19.
Yes. So had any of you been abroad before? Was this your first trip? So you were put on an ocean liner to go all the way across the Atlantic, and then a 5-day train trip down to Mesa, and you'd never been abroad before. So how did you feel about that? Was that an exciting prospect? What did you think, Wally? Were you...
Yes. I remember most our stay for one day in Chicago, and I was with had a mate there, and a skyscraper was something quite new to us, and we found the tallest one, which was then 54 stories. Well, you had to pay to go up. You could come down free in the lift. Well, we walked up the 54 flights.
I travelled across on the Queen Mary and got arrested. I should say that my arresting was because they put us on the 5th floor, and that was the bottom. The Queen Mary, I should explain, had unusual, and I don't know whether I'm allowed to mention this. Remember, it had a pipe on the outside, and as you use this necessary implement, there was a constant, do you remember? It was known as the magic pipe, because as people got up and left, it played a tune. I got arrested because with a friend of mine, Nubby Clark, as I called him, we said, it's grim 5 from span. So we put a singlet on and started running around the deck, and were promptly arrested and put into a sort of holding place. I should say that the voyage before this, they hit another ship across the path, and they cut it in half. And I think most of the men were lost. And they filled the front of the boat in with concrete, so it was quite a thing. We were arrested, and then they put us on passing the shells up. The Queen Mary had, I think, 4 or 5-inch guns, but we had no way of getting the shells up. So those of us who were malfacted in some way were put on carrying the shells up. But I was one of the few people who wasn't seasick, because the thing kept on changing direction to avoid the things. It was very off-putting. Everybody was seasick except me. So I was put down washing up the dishes. And you washed up the dishes at the side of the boat, and it tacked every sort of, was it 27 seconds or something? And you were washing up these dishes and you saw the sky and you couldn't believe that this thing was going to come up again. And everybody was sick, but I wasn't sick for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, I don't know if you mentioned it, but because I couldn't hear properly, but they had built this concrete emplacement on the top deck with an aircraft gun in it. So that as we went across, we weren't escorted by any other boats because we were faster than most of them, but it used to go 2 miles and then turn. And because of this concrete emplacement, it would go over. And then you'd go another 2 miles, it would turn, and so it could go over the other way. And this went on for miles and miles, every 2 miles, changing direction, and every 2 miles, this vast concrete emplacement on top with an aircraft gun would take the boat over, and then it would swing over the other side. I personally wasn't seasick, but quite a few were.
No, I wasn't seasick. That was why I was putting this in. I could see the sort of horizon coming and going.
Did you all travel over on the Queen Mary? Was that the main... How about yourself, Len? How did you get there?
Aquitania.
On
the Aquitania.
Aquitania.
I came back on the Aquitania.
Yeah. Yes. And we were on the Aquitania. It was full of American people that were injured.
Oh, okay.
So they fed them well, and of course, as a result, we felt were fed well as well.
So was it a hospital ship? Was it?
It was on hospital duties. We were on the lower floor, on about below sea level, and the thing of the day that we liked, well, the things we liked best of all was being allowed onto the top of the deck and that get some fresh air, because it's very noisy and we're very claustrophobic and rather a bit unpleasant. I went over with about 30 of us who've been to ITWs, us initial training wings, at Fish North. And we were sent eventually up to Granite, and we boarded on the Aquitania. The only thing I can remember of that is whilst I was sent to an American, I went to an aerodrome, and there were some Italian prisoners of war there. And my job one day was to escort these people to the farm where they worked and back again. And the RAF were very, very courteous. They gave me an Enfield gun. I couldn't speak English, Italian. They couldn't speak English. So they gave me a gun with no bullets. So what I was supposed to do, if they ran away, just throw the gun at them. But they were very, very, very good. They enjoyed themselves. That was I went to Aquitania, and I went into New York. I went up to Camp Kilmer, I think, and got a train through into Canada, down through the centre of America, and just about into Mexico, then up into Mesa.
What was it like arriving into New York? What did that feel like as you arrived? I mean, the Queen Mary must have been the same.
Yeah, come here, we were on the lower
So you didn't even see...
My recollection is that the Americans made a great fuss of us when we came into New York, and then we travelled on a train. But we found once we moved away on the train, we weren't at all popular with the French population. We stopped on 2 occasions, and the boys came back saying, "You want to be careful, these French people aren't at all sympathetic, are they?" And I said, "Oh, well, I should thought still We went to Moncton, where it was literally 20 or 30 degrees below, and they loaded us up with all the things we'd never eaten, you know, T-bones, food, and we all made ourselves horribly sick because it was food that we weren't used to. And it was very, very cold, and they put us in a big hangar and said, "You're going to sort you into 4 groups. We want to come back in a couple of hours and find you in 4 groups, because there are 4 schools that you can go to, except for the older boys who are going to stay here and become Lancaster pilots." So I said, "I don't mind where I go as long as it's hot," because it was 40 degrees at times. So the Falcon Field boys, incidentally, there's no Falcons in America, in Arizona. Although it's Falcon Field, there are no Falcons. I don't know how it got called.
Well, apparently it was called Thunderbird 3, and the British didn't like the fact that it was called Thunderbird, so they chose a British bird, and therefore it became Falcon Field.
I think it was local.
There were lots of hanging about, you know, waiting for things in the Air Force in those days. But I think we've probably arrived at a time when we were being rushed. Well, certainly I went through all the departments very, very fast, because we were losing planes everywhere, you know, losing aircraft and air crew. So I have a feeling I certainly went through very fast. I never stopped. When I came back, were given a sort of one go around to see what England looked like from the air, apart from, you know, all the vast planes. And then you were on to twin-engined at Calverley, Morris Oxfords, and then on to, I did 1 flight in a Whitley, which was quite enough, and 1 flight in a Wellington 10, only because they had the same engines as the Halifax, and then on to the Halifax, and then on to the squadron, because the squadron I was on had lost planes on the heavy water raid in Norway, and then on Arnhem they lost planes because we towed gliders with all the troops in, and so we lost planes, went all over the place, so they just pushed us through and said, "Right, you're next," and you're on the squadron, and that's how it happened. It was really quite fast.
Could I ask?
Sorry, can I come back to you in a second? Because Wally just wanted to mention about, was it about gliders?
You asked a question about did we go back. Can I just read you something? Arizona, Falcon Field, the friendly residents of Mesa, and British Royal Air Force Number 4 had such a profound impact on the cadets that passed through its doors that many returned to the Phoenix area, some to live permanently, some to vocation, some as snowbirds, even several married local girls. And it does go on to say that 326 cadets from British Royal Training School Number 4 gave their lives in defence of their homeland.
Sobering, isn't it? Sorry, what were you going to...
I was just going to pick up on what Keith said about the French not, or being a bit anti the British. That was in Canada, I assume, was it, when you went? Or was it in America?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear. They put us in a big hangar and said...
No, before you said the French were a bit anti the
Oh,
British.
very much
Was
so,
that in
yes.
Canada, I'm assuming?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, because did you notice that, Len?
No,
when you
we
my father was obviously with you at the time.
we were on the same train as Bill.
Yeah.
And we went through, our only thing I can remember is that our wheel came off and the train had to stop. Either the wheel came off or it broke. But we went through one part of America and we were told not to leave the train because we were in a German occupied area. Well, not occupied, sorry, a German area where a lot of people were the ancestors of, their fathers were German and they were anti-British. But I didn't have any information about, knowledge about French, but German certainly.
Right. I just wonder if the French thought, the British had abandoned them in Europe or something. I don't know. But it seems a bit surprising.
Any excuse to fall out?
Keith was talking about being in trouble, and you were telling me, Vernon, about being in trouble for landing.
Oh yes, I often got in trouble. But the thing was, you see, I'd gone from the wide open plains with cattle and the odd oil well into this mass of enormous cacti. I couldn't believe it. They were incredible things. And sometimes planes would come back as our planes, and they had bits of cactus in the engine cowling where they'd been doing low flying and gone a bit too low. And it was quite odd because the people that were training us, I think, were civilians. I think they were civilians, and they had fun with us. I remember we used to go out and do formation flying with other planes, and the instructors would take over and tap each other's wings as we went along. And when you got down, there'd be little dents in the end of the wings where they tapped each other. And, so they loved this sort of thing. But I suppose my worst time came when we were sent up to do things without instructors. And we were sent up to do formation flying. There were 5 planes up altogether, and we changed as we were flying into one who was going to lead and who was on the other planes. Well, it so came that the time to come in, I was the leader. So I told them that we were going to land, and we came around in a lovely formation of 5. And I told them we were on the downwind leg and all this sort of thing. And they said land, so I landed. And all 5 of us landed. It was lovely. I looked at them. Perfect landings, all of us. And of course came to a stop, went back to our position with where the engineers and everybody was. And I was told that the CO wants to see me immediately. So I thought, oh, that's good. He's going to congratulate me. So I went up, full of it, knocked on the door, said, Cadet Duker, you want to see me? And I won't tell you the sort of language that was used, but it wasn't quite straightforward. And he asked me, in simple language, what the hell I thought I was doing. I said I was landing the planes. He said, well, you landed 5. I said, I know, we were formation of 5, that's what we were doing. And then I got it. Hadn't anybody ever told me you never landed a formation like that? I said, no, nobody had ever told me. I didn't think he liked me after that.
I think the fact is that those of us who came in the ultimate courses had the richest time in a sense because with your excuse, the organisation was tremendous, and we, I think, had the best of everything in a sense that not only our instructors, but the whole organisation had reached a kind of peak almost, I think, and that was made a great difference in my view, in the sense that I was very, very keen on flying and getting it right. And boy, you had to get it right if you were on those courses, those final courses. It was really tough.
But Keith, for you and for Len, you didn't finish your courses because the war ended, so you were suddenly sent home.
To get in the harvest, yes. One minute we were the aces in Falcon Field, and the next, within a few weeks, we were getting in sugar beet, nearly cut my finger off, getting in sugar. Because all the girls had gone home who were getting in the thing.
So how did you feel about that? Was that a shock to you? Did it come out of the blue to say that, you know, your course is finishing?
I'll tell you what happened to us. I'm sorry about this, but it's true. We were put immediately on the land to get in the harvest. And somebody said, but then there's been an appointment of somebody to get out of India. And what about these people who are doing the harvest? And so they said, well, they actually didn't join the RAF. They joined the RAF VR, Volunteer Reserve. And in doing so, they promised to serve His Britannic Majesty in any part of his empire. So we can send them out to India. And so we went out to India for 2 years. And when we came back, nobody remembered anything about us, because you'd been packed up by the time we got back. And we weren't in any flying. We'd become known as mechanical engineers for some reason. Don't ask me why. But I do apologise, because I think I was a fraud from the beginning. I joined the Air Force because I wanted to fly. My father was the driver on the Royal Scot, and we had 4 brothers. I had 4 brothers. I was an afterthought. All my brothers were very keen railway people, but I got fairly disinterested because my father took me as a small boy for a short ride on a train. I thought, that's terrible. And my stepsister, who'd had this good sense to marry somebody who owned a shoe factory, took pity on me. And since she had more money than she knew what to do with, she took me up to Croydon and paid for me to go up in a de Havilland Rapide. And that was it. From then on, all I wanted to do was fly. And my family got fed up with me and flying, you know. But so I was a bit of a fraud in a way. I really joined the Air Force because I wanted to go on flying.
Did you get your wings, Keith? Did you get your wings?
They wouldn't give us our wings because what happened, we were in Falcon Field. What happened was the CEO called us out and said, the American president has cancelled Leedham. Nothing has arrived, no food, no petrol, anything. So go to your American friends. We've got a certain amount of food, but come back in a fortnight and we'll tell you what's going to happen. We all thought we would get our wings, those of us who'd done the 69 hours on the senior course. He said, you're going on the train tomorrow to go back to New York. And then we go from New York back to picking up the harvest. And 1 minute we were sort of, you know, the stars in the RAF stars. The next minute we were good for sort of getting in the harvest. And then somebody said about this Indian business, so we ended up in India. That's all by the way. So I think, in a way, we had a marvellous time on Falcon Field. The course were run with great tenacity. I mean, you know, if you were playing at it, you were in trouble. And one of our members, the 5 members I recall when we went on to advanced stuff, he was sent home with a rather derogatory remark that he lacked moral fibre. And you really had to have a certain degree of moral fibre to stay on that course, I can tell you. And we were given very, very, very tough things to do. And I was tremendously impressed myself. When I say impressed, I'd done some flying in England, and that's another story. We managed to mass up quite a lot of hours by being funded out to the Polish and people who'd come over, and we built up quite a lot of hours of flying on Tiger Moth. What an aircraft. So basically, I felt we had the cream of everything. People looked after us in Phoenix, and I still get Skype by some of the people who looked after us. And I think we were very fortunate. It was. I don't think you could have got anything better.
Can I just ask you, Wally, because obviously when you came back, the war was still in full flow, wasn't it? What did you do when you came back to Britain? What did you have to do?
Well, we were told that most probably we were going to fly Typhoons, and that was a state-of-the-art ground attack machine, but I never even saw one. Eventually, well, after quite a short time, along with about 600 other newly trained guys, I was seconded to the glider pilot regiment. They had Arnhem, and the Arnhem was a bit of a tragedy, and the Army glider pilot regiment lost a lot of their men, and they wanted a large number of pilots quickly to do what was going to be the last and the biggest glider operation ever done, Varsity. That was to establish a bridgehead over the River Rhine, and it took place in March 1945. The war finished a few weeks later, so we must have done a good job. Anyway, can I just... I've got something over here.
Can I pass you something? Was it is it your cigarette?
No.
No?
Yes.
Which is amazing. Absolutely
Yes.
amazing.
Oh, yes.
The war we took off on the 24th of March 1945. My tow pilot, a Canadian, talked with me, and he gave me a packet of cigarettes, Sweet Capital. Well, I took it on board this Horster. We were flying Horsters, and I set it on the compressed air bottle behind me, and it was about there. Well, coming into land, there was a bang, and of course I didn't know what had happened. It was a rifle bullet came through the windscreen, and eventually I looked for my packet of fags, and it was still there, but that's rifle bullet went straight through the middle of this. What it shows you, of course, if it had been 2 feet this way, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. But there were a lot of casualties, and I think about 60 of the RAF guys lost their lives on that day. And it just shows you how near to being killed you can be.
Yeah.
Vernon, what did you go on to do? Which squadron did you go to when you came back to the UK?
Well, the whole thing is that, you see, we're all different. And my friend here always wanted to be a pilot. I hadn't the faintest idea of being a pilot. It was a war on. I was brought up in a family of complete pacifists. We weren't allowed to have model soldiers at home, no tin soldiers. I wasn't allowed to have a drum because it was military. I couldn't blow a trumpet because it was military. It was completely pacifist. So I went into the ATC because what you did, they made me a corporal in the ATC. Not because I was a brilliant military person, but because I had the loudest voice. It's true. I could shout at them and tell them to stand at ease and to do all the things. And I was the only person that they could hear at the other side of the playground. So I was made a corporal. And I went into the Air Force, and they said, "You'll be a pilot." So I said, "Oh, right, I'll be a pilot." There was a war on. But I knew all about Nazi Germany and Hitler and all the rest of it. And there was a war on. So I did what I had to do in the war. And I flew. Now, when I came out of the Air Force, I hadn't the slightest interest in the Air Force. I wanted to be an actor. So eventually I ended up doing 3.5 years weekly rep all the way around the country. Some of your parents may have seen me and even booed me or applauded me, I have no idea. But then I can only say about my 3.5 years is that I was never out of work for more than about a fortnight. And in that fortnight, I used to do a bit of work standing on the door of a family business. And I was finally told, did I want to stay being an actor, or did I want to go to work fully for the family business? And I realized that if I worked for the family business, I could afford to go to the theatre, and if I stayed in the theatre, I couldn't afford to go to the theatre when I was out of work. So I stayed in the family business, and that is what I did eventually. I was in the family business. I was told that because my parents had been retired and finally died, and I lived in Devon with my sister and her husband, and he said one day we could buy a Grand Hotel in Torquay. We didn't know what it was. I said, "Where is he?" He said, "Near the station." I said, "Oh, right." I said, "And what are you going to do with it?" And he said, "Run it." And I said, "You don't know anything about running a hotel." They said, "Well, you can run it." So I said, "Well, I don't know anything about running a hotel." They said, "Well, you'll have to learn, won't you?" Bang! I was running a hotel of 150 bedrooms. At the same time commuting to London and working in the business there during the week. So that's, if you ask me what I did after the war, that's how it went. Until eventually we bought another big hotel in Torquay with 150 bedrooms.